In the dazzling world of K-pop, where fame and fortune go hand in hand with intense public scrutiny, a single misstep can quickly snowball into a full-blown controversy. This is the cautionary tale of Blackpink's Jennie, whose seemingly innocuous act of vaping indoors sparked outrage and shattered the carefully curated image she had worked so hard to maintain. It was a seemingly ordinary day in July 2024 when Jennie decided to share a glimpse of her behind-the-scenes routine with her legions of devoted fans. The young idol, known for her striking visuals and captivating stage presence, had carefully cultivated a polished public persona that resonated with audiences around the world. Little did she know that the innocent vlog she uploaded to her YouTube channel would soon become the center of a firestorm that would challenge her very standing as a K-pop idol. The video began innocuously enough, capturing Jennie as she sat in her dressing room, surrounded by her attentive staff. They were preparing the idol for an upcoming schedule, meticulously styling her hair and applying her makeup as Jennie quietly observed. But as the camera panned across the scene, viewers were shocked to see Jennie lift a dark-colored device to her lips and exhale a plume of vapor. It was unmistakably an electronic cigarette, and she was using it in close proximity to her makeup artists and hairstylists. The reaction from the public was swift and unforgiving. Across social media platforms, fans and netizens alike expressed their outrage, accusing Jennie of disrespecting her staff and blatantly disregarding indoor smoking regulations, which are strictly enforced in countries like South Korea and Italy, where the footage was filmed. Many were appalled by the idol's apparent disregard for the health and comfort of those around her, particularly in a professional setting where she should have been mindful of her actions. Faced with the mounting criticism, Jennie's agency, Haute Atelier, quickly issued a statement acknowledging the incident and promising to look into the matter. However, this half-hearted response only served to further inflame the situation, with many accusing the agency of not taking the issue seriously enough. Netizens demanded that Haute Atelier take more decisive action, with some even speculating that the video may have been deliberately uploaded to generate buzz around Jennie's burgeoning solo career. Adding fuel to the fire, Jennie's past indiscretions also began to surface, with her illegal parking incident from 5 years prior resurfacing and further tarnishing her reputation. In that incident, Jennie had been caught illegally parking her vehicle in front of a restaurant and then asking the staff to grill some tripe for takeout, disregarding the establishment's policies. This revelation only served to deepen the public's mistrust and disappointment in the idol, as it suggested a pattern of behavior that contradicted the image of discipline and professionalism Jennie had cultivated. The controversy only intensified when a Korean netizen reported Jennie's indoor vaping to the local embassies in Italy, threatening legal action against the idol. This development added a new layer of complexity to the situation, as it raised questions about the potential legal consequences Jennie could face for her actions. Concerns were raised about the impact this could have on Jennie's career, as well as the broader implications for the K-pop industry, which has long grappled with the delicate balance between maintaining a squeaky clean public image and the private lives of its stars. Faced with the relentless barrage of criticism, Jennie eventually took it upon herself to issue a personal apology through her agency. In a heartfelt statement, she acknowledged her mistake and expressed remorse for her actions, promising to be more mindful of her behavior in the future. Jennie's contrition was seen by some as a step in the right direction, a recognition of the gravity of her misstep and a willingness to take responsibility for her actions. However, the public's response to Jennie's apology was decidedly mixed. While some praised her for taking responsibility, others felt that her words rang hollow, arguing that she had failed to fully comprehend the negative impact and health concerns associated with her indoor vaping habit. Critics pointed to the fact that Jennie had not directly addressed the specific issues raised by the controversy, such as the potential harm to her staff and the disregard for local laws. As the controversy unfolded, speculation surrounding Jennie's fate continued to swirl. Would she face legal consequences for her actions in Italy? Would her commercial endorsements and partnerships be affected? And perhaps most importantly, how would this incident impact her standing within the Blackpink fandom and the broader K-pop community? The Jennie vaping saga had clearly struck a nerve with the public, exposing the deep-seated tensions and expectations that idols like her must navigate on a daily basis. While some fans remained steadfastly loyal, defending Jennie and arguing that her actions were merely a lapse in judgment, others felt betrayed, their once idyllic image of the young star irreparably shattered. For these disillusioned fans, Jennie's actions had undermined the carefully cultivated persona they had come to associate with her. The polished, poised, and professional idol they had admired now seemed fallible, her actions a stark reminder that even the most successful K-pop stars are not immune to the temptations and pitfalls of everyday life. This perceived breach of trust left many feeling let down, their faith in Jennie's integrity shaken to the core. On the other hand, Jennie's staunchest supporters argued that the controversy had been blown out of proportion, that the idol's actions were nothing more than a momentary lapse in judgment and that she should not be judged so harshly for such a relatively minor indiscretion. They pointed to Jennie's otherwise exemplary track record and the immense pressure she faces as a member of one of the biggest K-pop groups in the world, asserting that even the most disciplined individuals can sometimes fall short of the unattainable standards imposed upon them. As the controversy gradually began to fade from the public consciousness, Jennie and her agency were left to pick up the pieces and chart a path forward. The incident had served as a harsh reminder of the immense pressure and responsibility that come with being a K-pop idol, and the need to always be mindful of one's actions and the impact they can have on one's public image. For Jennie, the road ahead would undoubtedly be a challenging one, as she worked to rebuild the trust and goodwill she had once enjoyed among her fans. The idol would need to demonstrate a renewed commitment to her craft and her responsibilities as a public figure, proving that the vaping incident was an isolated incident and not indicative of a broader pattern of disrespectful or unethical behavior. But even as she resumed her activities with Blackpink and pursued her solo endeavors, the shadow of this controversy would linger, a cautionary tale for both Jennie and her fellow idols, a stark reminder of the delicate balance they must strike between their public persona and their private lives. The Jennie vaping saga had once again highlighted the precarious position occupied by K-pop stars, whose every move is scrutinized and dissected by an unforgiving public. In the end, the Jennie vaping saga serves as a poignant reminder of the immense pressure and scrutiny that K-pop idols face, and the need for them to constantly be on guard, lest a momentary lapse in judgment jeopardize the carefully crafted image they have worked so hard to cultivate. For Jennie, this experience has undoubtedly been a humbling one, a lesson in the power of public perception and the importance of maintaining the trust and respect of one's fans. As she and her agency navigate the aftermath of this controversy, the true test will be whether they can weather the storm and emerge stronger, a testament to the resilience and adaptability that have long been the hallmarks of the K-pop industry. The Jennie vaping saga may have tarnished her image in the short term, but it also serves as a powerful reminder of the industry's capacity for self-reflection and growth, as idols and their teams work to uphold the high standards expected of them by their devoted fan base. Ultimately, the Jennie vaping controversy stands as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the fragility of a K-pop idol's public persona and the need for constant vigilance in an industry where image is everything. As Jennie and her fellow stars continue to navigate the treacherous waters of fame and celebrity, they would do well to heed the lessons of this incident, recognizing that the trust and adoration of their fans is a precious commodity that must be guarded with the utmost care and respect. In the midst of this controversy, it's important to look at what the other Blackpink members have been up to. Rose has been focusing on her solo projects and musical career. She has been actively working on new music and recently teased a potential collaboration with a well-known artist, exciting her fans. Rose's dedication to her craft and her creative process have been evident through her social media updates and interviews, showcasing her growth as a solo artist. On the other hand, Jisoo has been expanding her horizons in acting. She has been receiving acclaim for her role in a recent drama series, demonstrating her versatility and talent beyond Blackpink. Jisoo's commitment to her acting career has been highlighted by her interactions with fans and her participation in promotional activities for the drama. Her ability to balance her acting commitments with her responsibilities as a member of Blackpink underscores her professionalism and dedication. Meanwhile, Lisa continues to make waves in both music and fashion. She has been actively involved in her solo career, with successful releases and collaborations that have garnered international attention. Lisa's influence extends to the fashion industry, where she continues to set trends and collaborate with renowned brands.